This run is producing polyester shoelaces. First, cones of fine polyester thread are fitted on the creel, which will feed the bobbin winding machines. The strands from 8 cones are grouped together and fed through one side of one machine and onto a bobbin. Next, the strands from 8 different cones are grouped together and fed through the other side of the machine and onto a second bobbin. Each group of 8 strands will produce one thick polyester thread, and the machine is programmed to wind a specific length of it. Each cone holds enough fine thread to wind a 115-kilometer long thick thread. For this particular shoelace, the machine is programmed to wind 2,500 meters of thick thread per bobbin. Next, 20 of these bobbins are installed on a braiding machine. The thread from each bobbin is passed through 3 eyelets, the second of which regulates the tension of the thread. Half the threads are then gathered and knotted so they will catch when fed into the machine. The braiding machine is started. It draws in the knotted threads, which pulls in the unknotted ones. The machine then begins braiding a continuous round shoelace cord. These wheels apply tension to pull any loose braids tighter so that the cord diameter is uniform. The finished cord, more than 1.5 kilometers long, collects in a barrel. Some shoelaces are made of knitted rather than braided cord. This time, the cones of thread feed the knitting machine directly. The machine's 4 latch needles can perform 2 types of knitting stitches to produce round cord. Once the knitted or braided cord is ready, 4 metal pegs of a winding device are set to the shoelace length that's being made. The cord is then wound around the pegs, up to 250 times, depending on the cord diameter. The end of the cord is cut. Then the cords are tied together so that they can be easily transferred to a tipping machine. The center of each cord is passed over an acetone-saturated felt pad, then inserted into the machine's die. The die wraps a piece of acetate film tightly around the cord, then cuts it in the middle, producing a shoelace with a stiff tip on each end, called an aglet. This press applies a nickel-plated steel tip, a type used on bag drawstrings. 2 tips are manually placed directly on the cord, with a slight gap in between them. The press is activated, pressing the steel tip onto the lace, and the cord is cut in the gap. This factory also makes rick-rack, a flat zigzag trim that's sewn onto clothing. These rick-rack braiding machines are 120 years old. Each one holds 3 to 73 bobbins of thread. The more bobbins used, the wider the rick-rack. There are 2 ways to make multicolored rick-rack or braided shoelace cord. Mount different shades of solid color bobbins on the braiding machine, or wind multicolored thread on each bobbin. To make multicolored knitted shoelace cord, mount different shades of solid color thread cones or multicolored thread onto each cone. To produce different shapes and sizes, different types of braiding and knitting machines are used, varying the number of bobbins or cones from 8 to as many as 73. An even number produces a round shoelace, an odd number a flat one. With so many possibilities, shoelaces can be fashionable as well as functional, though the chances are you'd tie yourself up in knots choosing a pair.